Hi there, and welcome to Out There, a Cryptid podcast. I'm Josh, and today we're venturing into the real-life ghost stories of New Orleans, chilling encounters and unexplained experiences that real people shared on Reddit. Let's dive in. We've already explored some of the most infamous and unusual tales to ever come out of New Orleans, from the horrifying legacy of Madame LaLaurie to whispers of real vampires walking the French Quarter, and of course, the haunting melody of the Axeman. But this city's ghosts don't just live in history books and legends. They linger in hotel rooms, echo through old streets, and appear in stories shared by real people. The ones who've seen, heard, or felt something they couldn't quite explain. So now, let's step away from the history and into the first-hand encounters. We'll get into the New Orleans Reddit stories right after this. Our first story is titled, quote, "I had a weird experience in New Orleans last summer," end quote. I had two interesting encounters last summer in New Orleans, and I just wanted to tell someone. I've never really considered myself to be sensitive, although I have seen a person who recently died. Last summer, I was in New Orleans with my husband, and we went on our typical run-of-the-mill ghost tour. The last stop was at LaLaurie Mansion. Suddenly, something came over me, and I couldn't face the mansion. And I had this loud voice in my head telling me, "We don't acknowledge her." My husband asked me what was wrong, and I told him, "We don't acknowledge her." He looked incredibly confused, and I apologized and said, "I can't look at this place, I'm sorry." The next day, we went to the New Orleans Pharmacy Museum. While inside, my husband was immediately affected with a sharp headache. Meanwhile, I felt like someone was immediately attached to me, and he had his hands on my uterus. He was trying to touch my abdomen. I repeatedly heard in my head, "Let me look, I want to see." When we went upstairs to the top of the museum, my husband's headache became considerably worse. I got the sense that whoever was on me wanted him to leave, so it would just be me. After passing a particular exhibit case, my husband announced that we were leaving, and to stay where I was and not to come to him. He just kept repeating, "I don't want you to see." As soon as we walked out of the front door of the museum, his headache immediately cleared, and I could feel the man watching me leave. His frustration was palpable. He wanted to separate us. Later, back in the hotel, I did some research and found out that the doctor who used to live there used to torture pregnant women. He would get them alone or away from a male companion and basically torture them to death. I recently had a baby, and I got this strong feeling that the doctor in the museum had never seen a uterus after childbirth, and he wanted to see. I also read that sometimes men experience strong and excruciating headaches and don't stay in the museum long, leaving their female companions, wives, girlfriends, whoever, alone. This one from CatMom821 really gets under your skin. What makes it so chilling isn't just the story itself, it's how it's connected to New Orleans' haunted reputation. Places like the LaLaurie Mansion and the Pharmacy Museum aren't just random spots on ghost tours. These are sites with real, dark histories. Madame LaLaurie's cruelty and Dr. Joseph Dupas' experiments on pregnant women cast a shadow that some people can still feel today. What's wild here is how the user picked up on the energy almost immediately, feeling a pull away from the LaLaurie mansion before even knowing the details, and then having an experience at the pharmacy museum that mirrors the doctor's reported actions. Even the husband's headache fits a pattern that we've heard so many times before. It's the kind of story that reminds you these aren't just old legends on a tour. Some places really do hold on to the energy of what happened there, and certain people are sensitive enough to feel it. In New Orleans, where history, trauma, and superstition all overlaps, encounters like this make you question whether the past ever really stays buried. Or is it just waiting for someone to notice? Our next story is from the user Geraldo Lucia, and shares their personal experience from the haunted house they rented. I lived in a house in the Bywater for 3 incredible years. The landlord gloated upon us, touring that he bought it post-Katrina and fixed it up. It was an ugly place before that, allegedly. Well, I'm there for a few months and occasionally feel some strange things, but I brush it off. Rent is cheap, the house is big, I'm poor. One day, while walking down the street and making small talk with a neighbor a few houses down, she tells me the tea. There was a family of 4 living in the house during Katrina, and they all died. Great. Love that. Whatever, I'm poor, and I'm gonna pay them ghosts no mind, and hope they pay me no mind right back. Everything was pretty calm until hurricane season came. In the lead up to hurricanes, while the weather was still calm, but everyone's getting ready to hunker down, lights would flicker increasingly. Cupboard doors and bedroom doors would open or close, and light switches would turn on and off by themselves. That family would get really upset before hurricanes. One hurricane in particular, I had just come down with strep throat. Everyone evacuated because the water level was so high, but I stayed put because my car wasn't working and I was sick as a dog. As I laid on the couch floating in and out of fever dreams while the hurricane missed us entirely, the back door somehow opened to the backyard and my dog was able to get in and out and go to the bathroom. I always thought that maybe they were looking out for me and my little boy when I wasn't able to. This one hits differently because it's tied to one of the darker chapters of New Orleans' actual history, Hurricane Katrina. The storm didn't just wreck buildings, it tore communities apart, claimed lives, and left scars that are still felt today. In neighborhoods like the Bywater, you can still feel the weight of all of those stories in the homes that survived, and in the ones that didn't. What makes this one stand out, though, is that it's not about a vengeful or angry ghost. It's about a family who, according to local lore, never left their home after Katrina. They didn't terrorize the new tenant. They reacted to hurricanes with fear, with the flickering lights and moving doors, like they were reliving their trauma. But then, when the storyteller was sick, stuck, and vulnerable, something remarkable happened. That back door opened on its own, so their dog could get out safely. It's a good reminder that not every ghost in New Orleans is here to harm. Some are trapped in the places where they lived, reliving old fears, but still capable of compassion. Stories like this blur the line between tragedy and protection, showing that even in death, some spirits are still watching out for the living. Our next story is less sweet and more creepy. It's titled, quote, "Ghost Picture I Took in Downtown New Orleans," end quote. And you guessed it, it includes photo evidence. So, a while back, I was visiting family over in New Orleans. We were on a ghost tour downtown on Bourbon Street, I believe it was called. The guide told us about this school that is said to be haunted, and that we would walk by it at the end of our tour. Once we reached the school, I took out my phone and took a burst photo, trying to see if I could catch anything in the windows of it. On the road back home, I started to look at the pictures to see if I got anything out of all the burst photos I took. Only problem was that I was only looking inside the windows of the school. and not paying attention to the outside. Once I started observing the whole photo, I noticed that in one of the pictures was a man in some kind of top hat or a fedora, clear as day, walking nearly right in front of me. The thing that threw me off was that if I zoomed in, he was completely transparent. Also, if you don't know, burst photos on iPhone take pictures very, very fast in a short burst of time, so you don't miss anything. This man was in only one of the pictures, when he should have been moving along down the sidewalk as each picture was taken. Could just be my memory, but I don't remember anyone walking in front of the camera when taking this photo either. I was freaking out and showing everyone I knew down there what I caught. I was around 15 at the time, 19 now. My uncle owns a bar in Louisiana called Lake Town Bar and Grill, and I was showing all of the customers this picture. Everyone there was freaking out too. Also, for some reason, all the people I showed it to, I had to circle where it was because they couldn't see what I was seeing. But once you do see it, it is as clear as day. I'm going to link the picture right below. I have two pictures here, one of the raw picture, and the other I circled the entity just in case you can't see it. Please let me know what you think. There's something especially chilling about this one, because it isn't just a story, it's a photograph. A single frame that looks like it caught a moment between worlds, and it happened right in the heart of the French Quarter, near a school. That area has seen everything: 19th century residents, tourists, musicians, street preachers. When someone catches a transparent figure in period clothing, it makes you wonder how much of that history is still walking the streets. What makes it even creepier is that it only showed up in one burst photo. Burst mode snaps several images in a row, so if it were a real person passing by, they'd be in every frame, not just one. And the hat, whether you see it as a fedora or a top hat, gives it that unmistakable timeless look. Now, of course, we've talked about the Hat Man before, usually tied to sleep paralysis, but that's what sets this story apart. This wasn't a dream. It wasn't a half-awake hallucination. This was broad nightlight on Bourbon Street, caught on a camera by someone wide awake. That makes it a lot harder to brush off. More on the New Orleans Reddit stories right after this. This next one is titled, quote, "My wife and I were haunted at our wedding in New Orleans," end quote. I've been an avid reader of this subreddit since 2017, ever since my first ghost encounter in the Philippines, but that's a story for another time. Given how recent this particular experience was, and the fact that I have some photographic evidence, I figured it would be worth sharing. My wife and I got married in New Orleans on March 7th. As a gift, my sister-in-law covered a 3-night stay for us at a hotel, St. Vincent. For context, this hotel was originally an infant asylum, before being converted into a boutique hotel in 2021. On the night of Thursday, March 6th, after our welcome party, my wife and I returned to our room and ordered some room service. After eating, we had to separate for the night to follow the tradition of sleeping apart before the wedding. My wife stayed with her family, and there was no way in hell I was staying alone in that room given the hotel's history. I knew I'd psych myself out all night, so I crashed in my mom's hotel room since she had an extra bed. The next morning, I went back to our room to get ready for the wedding. I spent most of the morning alone, and the vibes felt fine. At some point, I was scrolling through my camera roll, looking at pictures from the night before, when I noticed that my wife had taken a photo of our room. Something in the reflection of the TV caught my eye. I zoomed in immediately. Noped the F out. I decided I wasn't going to look at that image again until we checked out. Meanwhile, some friends were also staying at the hotel, and one couple in particular ended up changing rooms multiple times. The husband had never believed in ghosts before, but after their experience at Hotel St. Vincent, that changed. They reported seeing handprints, a chandelier moving despite no open windows or AC, and even had the hotel staff cover all the mirrors. Now, back to our wedding night. We returned to our room around 2 a.m., completely exhausted. I didn't experience anything, but my wife later told me that as she was lying in bed, taking out her veil, she heard voices. She didn't mention it to me until we had checked out. Despite that, we managed to sleep through the night, though we did leave a light on. Then came Saturday, our final night in New Orleans. After saying goodbye to our remaining wedding guests, we got back to our room around 9:30 p.m. As we were getting ready for bed, my wife suddenly said, "Did you hear that?" The second she said it, I responded, "Yes," and immediately got chills. We both heard a distinct whooshing sound, as if something was moving through the room. My wife kept hearing it, though, throughout the night, while I caught it a few times, but the unease was enough to keep me awake. Thankfully, we had to leave at 4:45 a.m. for a quick post-wedding getaway in Miami, and with daylight savings that night, the hours flew by. My wife managed to doze off for a bit, but she later told me that while she was dreaming about the wedding and trying to focus on happy thoughts, disturbing visions kept interrupting her sleep, such as an old picture of a woman in her dreams and a child screaming. I, on the other hand, did not sleep at all. I kept my eyes closed, but the overwhelming feeling of being watched never faded. When my 4:20 a.m. alarm finally went off, I jumped out of bed, ready to get the hell out of there. As I was packing our bags, and my wife was brushing her teeth, I heard a voice behind me. Thinking it was her, I asked, "Did you say something?" She hadn't. That was it. We were out. While waiting in line at the airport, I finally told my wife about the photo I had seen in the TV reflection. I had purposefully avoided showing it to her until we left the hotel. When I zoomed in and handed her the phone, she turned pale and said, "I'm gonna throw up." A couple days later, I decided to take another look. This time, I zoomed in on the other side of the image, and I swear I could make out the outline of a child with eyes staring right below the mirror under the lamp. So that's the story. If anyone has experienced anything similar at Hotel St. Vincent, I'd love to hear about it. Much love to this community for reaffirming my beliefs since my first encounter back in the Philippines. Now, this one is good because it's about more than just a haunted hotel. It's about a building carrying decades of human experience, grief, and care. Hotel St. Vincent started as an infant asylum, so before it became a boutique hotel, it housed orphans, unwed mothers, and infants. That kind of history leaves a heavy energy, and you can feel it in the stories like this. What makes this wedding story so unsettling is the sheer intensity of the experiences. The whispers, the whooshing sound, chandeliers moving on their own, handprints, and even the hotel staff covering mirrors for other guests. It's exactly the kind of thing you'd expect from a textbook haunting, but the fact that it happened during a wedding weekend adds another layer. Moments of major life events, births, weddings, deaths, are believed in folklore to thin the veil between the living and the dead, so it makes sense that the activity would spike then. What makes it really compelling is that both partners experienced it fully awake, and some of it was even captured on camera. This isn't a case of someone spooking themselves on a ghost tour or imagining things. It's a shared, undeniable encounter. And that's what feels so unique about New Orleans, a place where beauty and darkness, celebration and tragedy all coexist under the same roof. Hotel St. Vincent is a reminder that some places don't forget the people who pass through them, and sometimes those people don't forget that place either. Our next story is titled, quote, "My First Experience with a Ghost Possession in a Haunted Hotel in New Orleans," end quote, and it comes from the user Claudia Insights. My story takes place in 2018. Picture it, New Orleans during Halloween or Creux de Bois season. My parents and I were there to celebrate a birthday, my father's, and attended a healthcare conference to present research, me. We decided to stay at the Hotel Monteleone, located in the French Quarter, because that is where my conference was taking place. Little did I know, it's also known for being haunted. As a psychic medium, I was fully prepared to have many paranormal experiences, but I was not prepared for what happened to both my parents soon after we arrived. On the first night of our arrival, my parents had stayed in my room, because their room was double booked. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to find my father sitting up in his bed across from mine. There was a thin, androgynous, 8-foot-tall being touching his leg. I watched for a few minutes. My dad laid back down, and the benevolent being disappeared. The next day, I asked my dad about it, and he said he was visited by an alien being who told him he was healing his sciatica pain. Indeed, his pain disappeared for months and months. 4 days later, my parents are now staying in their room. On the last morning of our stay, my father rings me to please come to their room. I get there and see that they are both anxious and bewildered. My father then proceeds to tell me that he knows my mother was possessed by a spirit that night before, who kept insisting that she jump from the window in her room. My dad stated that around 3 a.m. the night before, my mother woke him up to tell him to hold her hands and to not let her go. My father thought my mom was having a stroke because her face looked somehow faded. She was there, but not, he said. His intuition told him to keep guard. My mother recounted that she felt when a young woman entered her body, but pushed past her father to hold her hands until the morning came. She said the woman kept asking her to go to the window and jump. My mother said all she could do was pray for protection. She said she focused on my dad and asked Spirit to leave her. We left New Orleans a little shaken, but okay. When we got back home, I reached out to the hotel and spoke to a manager about the incident. He informed me that he had worked there 5 years, and I was the third person he spoke to who had this experience. He validated that there was a story that a young woman had jumped to her death from that room after being jilted by a lover. I sure do wish they had disclosed that information prior to me booking that room. Now I know better. I ask before I book. If there's any hotel in New Orleans that deserves this haunted reputation, it's the Hotel Monteleone. Tucked in the heart of the French Quarter, it's one of the city's most famous hotels, and one of the most famous hotels in the country. Over the years, countless guests have reported cold spots, strange noises, and ghostly encounters, especially on the upper floors. The hotel even embraces its spooky reputation on tours. But this story stands out because it captures both sides of New Orleans hauntings, the benevolent and the dangerous. It's such a reminder that not every haunting in New Orleans is about evil spirits. Some of them seem lost, stuck in the emotions that tied them to this world. Fear, heartbreak, unfinished stories. That's part of what makes this city so unique. You can feel those layers everywhere you go. And honestly, the fact that the hotel manager said other people had the same experience, that's chilling. It makes you think there's something about that room that just holds on. Still, I kind of love that the first encounter wasn't terrifying, because it's proof that even in the city full of ghosts, not all of them mean harm. Some just linger, trying to connect in their own way. Our next story is from a user that has now since deleted their Reddit. The story may be hard to believe, especially since I don't have the photo at hand, but I promise I'm telling you the truth. When I was a kid, I went on a church service trip to New Orleans. Our aim was to help clean up remaining damages from when Katrina hit. About midway into the trip, we helped remove brush and debris from some plot of land so a playground could be built. We were all ecstatic because the day was incredibly productive, and we really believed that the spiritual forces of good and godliness were at work through us. That night, we visited Bourbon Street to have dinner, listen to some live music, and celebrate the work that had been done. At some point, one of the church leaders was taking pictures and pointed her camera to the sky, facing a distant casino. The sky was clear, no clouds, She snapped a photo, and when the screen displayed her photo, there was a silver-looking face smiling while clasping his hands / protecting the casino. His face seemed metallic with many wrinkles. If you can imagine the Heath Ledger Joker, but without eyes, a huge mouth, no teeth, and many wrinkles, like fabric being pulled in multiple directions. That's what it looked like. It had wet-looking orange hair that draped about midway down its face. Its nose was half missing. The entire group went hysterical when they all looked at the photo, and the rest of the night we were disrupted. The joy we had felt all day instantly went away. Few of us slept. I had a variety of hallucinations in the dark, of demons falling into me. I didn't get any sleep. There were a few girls in the room next to me who I could hear crying in terror about what had taken place. I say all this to illustrate how the incident felt like a direct, successful attempt to hijack our spirits of positive energy. One person in the group tried to come up with multiple natural explanations of the incident, but the leader who took the photo always had new details to explain, how there wasn't a natural explanation for what had taken place. The incident alone has been enough to keep my agnostic but alert and aware of all possibilities. Now this one gives you chills. You can almost feel the whiplash in that story, going from a day of doing good work, cleaning up Katrina's scars, feeling that sense of purpose and lightness, and then running straight into something so dark and ugly, it felt like it hijacked the entire group's energy. New Orleans has this way of holding opposites right on top of each other. You've got joy, music, service, resilience, and at the very same time, you've got grief, trauma, and shadows that never quite left. That's part of why the city feels so electric, and why experiences like this hit so hard. What's really striking to me here isn't just the description of that face, it's how everyone felt. Whole groups of people crying, sleepless, and shaken. That's not a single person scaring themselves, that's a collective reaction. And whether you chalk it up to something paranormal, a spiritual attack, or a massive shared hallucination, it still speaks to how powerful places and moments can be. And honestly, I love that even after something so terrifying, the storyteller is still open-minded. In New Orleans, you're constantly reminded that there's more to this world than what we see. Sometimes beautiful, sometimes terrifying, but always powerful. More on the New Orleans Reddit stories right after this. Our final story is titled, quote, "How Haunted Are You?" End quote. I lived in NOLA for about a year and a half. I had my first experience a couple nights ago. I live in the French Quarter, on St. Louis. Okay, I lied. My first ghost was at work in the CBD. The restaurant I worked at was an old Creole cottage, and my office was on the 3rd floor. Whenever I was alone, I would hear a man whispering, or I would feel a hand on my back. Finally, I got locked in the office, in the attic. A door stuck and violently swung open after a few minutes. Then stuff started happening with my prep guys around. Voices, doors swinging wide open or slamming shut, shadows passing. When I reluctantly spoke to my coworkers about it, who were all New Orleans natives, they just shrugged and said, "We all seen him. You live here long enough and you learn to live with them." About a year ago, I had a dream. A woman in full-out 1920s fashion was taking me around a party happening in my apartment. But it wasn't my apartment. It was the townhouse I live in, but the downstairs was a bar, complete with someone playing an old ragtime drag on piano. It was hot, fans were going, and the doors were all open, and I thought, okay, I am dreaming, because there are 2 doors to the front of this building, and they're archways. In real life, present day, there's only one door, the one to my unit upstairs. My boyfriend must have heard me talking in my sleep, and he tried to wake me up. I was reluctant and hard to wake, and I remember right before I left the dream, she said, "No, don't go yet. I haven't told you. I felt like I was ripped through time when my boyfriend finally aroused me. It was painful, nauseating, and he said I wasn't making any sense. A month later, or so, I got curious and went on archives and found my address. I found 2 pictures of my townhouse from the 1920s, 30s. You guessed it, 2 arched doorways and a beer advertisement hanging above one of the doors. Another month goes by and the knocking starts. 3 a.m., 3 knocks. It happened once a week for some time. Being an Italian Catholic girl, I know not to answer that door. I thought it was a prank or some homeless people, but when I look out my 2nd-story window, no one is there. They even ring the intercom. A few nights ago at 2:45 a.m., a shadow comes over my shoulder as I unlock the door. We're almost cheek to cheek, and I whipped around like someone was trying to mug me. It was like someone was reaching for the door. No one was there. I was alone on the street. It happened again tonight. Less intense, and it was about 10 p.m., but I made a point to say, "You're not welcome here. Goodbye." I think I needed to put a line of salt on my stoop because this guy is not friendly. He's not like the prankster I had at work in the CBD, and I get the feeling that the woman in my dream was trying to warn me. Does anyone else have any ghost stories? Anyone know about a ghost on St. Louis? Or about the Axeman's ghost? Because the jazz music and the fact that I'm a young Sicilian woman feels really eerie. This one feels like the quintessential New Orleans haunting. It's not just one weird thing, it's a whole tapestry of experiences. Whispers, hands on your back, door slamming, time slip dreams, and that ominous knocking at 3 a.m. It's got all the hallmarks of a city where the veil is paper thin. What really jumps out to me is how local this haunting feels. You've got a Creole cottage in the CBD, a townhouse with a hidden past, jazz music drifting through a dream, and a young Sicilian woman right in the heart of the French Quarter. That's basically the living, breathing backdrop of the Axeman legend. Jazz at night, Sicilian immigrants, and an unsolved figure who terrified the city a century ago. It gives the story a whole extra layer of eeriness. And the woman in the dream? I mean, that gave me chills. It feels like a classic warning spirit, not there to scare, but to say pay attention. In so many New Orleans stories, you see that pattern. One spirit trying to guide or protect, another spirit causing chaos. It's like the city itself contains both energies at once. I also loved that the co-workers just shrugged and said, "Yeah, we've seen them." That's such a New Orleans response. People here live so close to their history, they don't even question that ghosts are a part of their daily scenery. If anything, this story really captures why the French Quarter feels so haunted. Not just because of tragedy, but because of how alive its past still is. Some spirits here play tricks, some warn, and some maybe want more than just attention. New Orleans has always been a city where the past and the present collide, where music drifts from century-old bars, where history lingers in the streets, and where ghosts don't just live in stories. They live alongside us. We've heard first-hand accounts from locals, visitors, and people who stumbled into the city's unseen layers by accident. From spirits that are lost and heartbroken, to those who seem protective, to the unexplainable moments caught on camera. All of these encounters remind us that New Orleans just isn't haunted by legend. It's haunted by memory, by emotion, and by the very people who once walked its streets. So whether you're walking the French Quarter at midnight, wandering past the old mansions, or just listening to these stories from your bedroom, remember, in New Orleans, the veil is thin, and the city's shadows are always watching. So, what do you think? Are the spirits of New Orleans really out there? Be sure to follow us on Instagram at OutThereCryptids for episode posts, updates, and more. Join our community on Discord, where we dive even deeper into the mysteries we explore here on the podcast. The link can be found on our Instagram. And if you're loving the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. As a patron, you'll get exclusive perks like bonus episodes, early access, and even surprises. See you next week.